Good evening, T-Rock. How are we doing tonight? Appreciate it. Well, any Texas Rangers fans in the house tonight? There we go. I figured that would get a little bit more louder crowd. So, just so knowing, I definitely wanted to have the game. I have my notes right here. But I was telling Heather, I was like, I kind of want to have the game here. She goes, I will literally come take your iPad from you if you do that. But I have it on the other tab, so give you updated. If you don't know, Rangers are up 1-0, end of the 7th. So, yep, so going to the top of the 8th. So, hopefully we become World Series champs by the end of it. But let me introduce myself. My name is Cody Vannoy. I get the privilege of serving as the college pastor here. And it's funny enough that the Rangers are talking tonight that we get to talk about this. First off, we're going to do another thing too. Making some noise again if you're a Rangers fan. Perfect. Okay, now I want to hear my Astros fans. Make some noise for Astros fans. Congrats, but you're going to have a new World Series champ this year. I'm sorry. We went through. Hey, but I'll tell you this. I'll give you credit, Houston Astros fans. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? So we're going to give you props, right? Your time's over now. It's time for Arlington baseball. That's all I'm saying, right? But it's funny that we're talking about this and why I'm bringing this up, because the Rangers used to stink. We were not supposed to be in this position at the start of the year. I talked to my buddy Landon in the previous season or at the beginning of this year. I'm going, man, what would be our goal for this year? And he asked me that, and I go, well, man, if we could just get to 500, which would be 81 wins because there are 162 games in the year. I was like, if we could just get to 81 wins and be 500, that's a success, right? So we actually have their standings. But if you go back 2 years ago, there are our standings, I believe, on there. Remember, I might have actually put them out of order. There we go. Okay, yeah, so I actually put them out of order, so apologies on my put up there. But we have the Rangers. This was their record 2 years ago in 2021. 2020 was a weird year. They only played like 60 games. But by far the worst team in their division, right? Like, so bad, 100 losses. So then the front office goes, well, we got to get some change. They just had a new stadium they just built. And they said, okay, well, we got to get some change. We're going to sign some big free agents. They spent over $500 million the next offseason. So you think, oh, we're going to think better results, right? 2022 happens, and those standings are, like, they won 8 extra games, right? Like, still really bad. By the way, you need to be about 90 wins to be a playoff. Those two teams up top, the Astros, Mariners, were at the top. They were by far the best, right? And so then like, okay, well, now we got to focus on pitching. And so this is why I told my buddy, like, hey, if we could just get to 81 wins, that's a 13-win increase. Next year is our year, right? 2024 is our year, right? Then this year ends, and the standings look like this. We tie the Astros. We kind of do a bad part on our part where we lose, like, the last 10 games or whatever it is. But we go through the wild card. When I was projected, we go through the Astros. Sorry, Astros fans, but I may say that as many times as I can tonight, just to rub it in just a little bit. But the point of it is that they were not expected to do this, right? And so they weren't expecting to do that. And it's funny because things sometimes happen seasons. They're going to have a new spring season. The season hopefully ends tonight. But if they go to Game 7, it'll end Saturday. But the funny thing is there's some things that never change. And one of the things that never changes, me being a sports fan, is the other sport that's in Dallas. And that is our good old Cowboys, right? There we go. We can make some noise for it, right? Hey, we're just good enough to get our hopes up every year, and then we stick in the playoffs. Every year, right? It does not change, right? I guess we were just greedy in the 90s, and they're like, we're never going to win another one again. We're going to get just excited, and then not, right? So there's some things that change, and there's some things that don't when we have our seasons. For an example, who's excited about the cold front that came in this week? Anybody? A little bit? Okay, some people are. Okay, so we're going to do another experiment, okay? All the people that like the warm weather, make some noise. You live in a good state. We live in Texas. It's hot, right? This summer was absolutely hot. But now make some noise if you like the cold. Maybe not the cold front, but the cold. So it's about probably a little bit more good thing you live in a good state, right? But it's supposed to be cold. So seasons happen, things change. But the thing about that is that change is really hard. And a lot of times we don't like change. Sitting there, like there's some people that are like, hey, I love the cold change. I'm loving it. And there's some people that don't. Right, there's some people that are not going to accept that the Rangers are the new powerhouse of the MLB, but that's okay, right? It's okay, it happens, but change is going to happen. It's all right. So when you have that, but here's another one. A lot of people are getting closer to the new year, and a lot of have New Year's resolutions. Anybody make some New Year's resolutions? Like, do they ever do New Year's resolutions? Anybody? Nobody? Just a couple? Okay, well, I thought there was going to be a lot more. It's okay. But when we have our New Year's resolutions to do it, I've tried to do them in the past because I'm just I'm going to better myself better. And I'll tell you a couple that I've done. One year was a guitar, and I still have that guitar in the stand. It's literally when I wake up in the morning, it's sitting right there in my bed. Haven't picked it up once, right? I bought the guitar. I spent the money on it. Didn't use it, right? I've tried to read books. One year I was like, hey, I'm going to read 12 books this year, so one per month. Did not happen. And I was like, next year I went, okay, I'm going to do 6. that didn't happen, right? So we have our New Year's resolutions. Told myself to not procrastinate, to save money, eat a little bit healthier. I have all these different things that I had, but change is hard because we get in a habit. But the reality of seasons and the seasons of that we have, because that is our title for today, is seasons, but it's also what this series is. So it'll be a 4 week. So this is week 1 of it, and Pastor Christy Barnes will be up here next week. So really excited for that. But in this seasons series, we're going to look at some quotes that kind of describe the differences of seasons, kind of talk about different things. And the first one is this: the changing of the seasons marks our journey through life, embracing and learning from each experience. Another one quote is, change is the only constant in life, and the seasons have their own way of reminding us of that. And the last one is, change is inevitable during the seasons, but it can also bring about great new opportunities. So change is difficult, it is hard, but sometimes it is necessary, and in reality, it's some things that we just we can't stop that. And so you may be wondering, well, Cody, why are we talking about change? You've said change about probably the word 30 times in the last 2 minutes. Why is that such a big deal? Well, it's because I've experienced a season of change my life personally, and that's why this is so important to me. And so I kind of want to share you a little bit of my past, about 9 to 12 months. So obviously I'm a big Rangers fan, talk about it, but a lot of that is I've been a baseball fan my entire life. If you don't know, I talk about it a lot, but I used to play baseball here. And so in the spring of 2022, we were at the University of Baylor, and I'm in a warm-up, and I throw, and my whole arm goes numb for about 2 minutes. After I throw, I do in warm-up pregame. I go to the coach, I'm like, hey, we got to go get my elbow, like something's wrong. Find out that something is torn in there, and they say, okay, well, you can get immediate surgery, well, not immediate, but you can get surgery, and the school will pay for it. I'm like, well, that's cool. But they're like, you have surgery. If you do full reconstruction of it, it'll be 14 to 16 months. So there goes my next season, right, my senior year. I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So then they do this process called PRP, which where they take blood, and it's a weird process. But basically, it's just a shortened thing. But it's not a guarantee that it's going to fix it. It's more of like a chance. And I said, well, I'm just going to do that because I just can't do it any other way. I've got to do it here. So I try it. I go all through summer. Last summer, I do rehab, and it works great. I don't have a single arm problem. I get back in. They finally release me into full practice. My second practice, we do a live guy, Brandon House, still remember his name. Brandon House is actually still on the team. Walks. He steals on the first pitch. I throw the ball, because I was a catcher. I threw the ball on the steal. I felt something move in my elbow. I immediately grabbed my mask. People thought I got mad because I just didn't throw the guy out. But I threw my mask, and I told the pitcher, like, throw the ball. I threw it back, and I was like, nope. I knew something was wrong. I did that, having the exact same thing had happened. And so the doctor goes, hey, well, you can do, since that PRP, you can try it again, and you'll be another 3-month recovery. So basically, your fall season's done. Or you can do a synthetic brace, which is anywhere from probably about a 3-month process, but it's a little more fixable. Or you can do the full surgery again. I was like, well, I'm not going to ever throw a baseball really again, so I'll take the synthetic one. So I realized that my time playing a baseball was over. I knew it was over. And so at this time, my family every year does this thing where we pick a new word every year that we decide, be like, hey, this is our word of the year. Maybe you do this, maybe you don't, but we do this word of the year. Well, I didn't have this word, but it was this phrase that came up to me because I knew baseball's ending. That was right at the time when Pastor Nick came up and said, hey, the role of the church is available. Would you want to be intrigued in that? I said, absolutely. I also had a job at the Tarleton Sports Network, and I was doing that over there, and I was trying to graduate with masters. So I knew this season, I was entering a season of new, a lot of first, right? So this phrase that came in was embracing the new. It was this phrase that was just so adamant on this. And I want to clarify something. When somebody says, they say, oh, I heard God, they didn't actually hear God's voice. It was a moment where they look on it and they just realize through an epiphany, or they look back on their moments in that life, and then they can go, oh, God was clearly telling me this, right? Now, if anybody in this room has audibly heard God, come talk to me after. I'd love to hear that conversation, okay? But I've never had that happen where God has physically been like, Cody, embracing it. No, that did not happen, okay? It was not like that. It was just, I understood I was entering a new season anew, right? So I was sitting there and I was like, instead of hide from it, let's embrace it, right, in this busy new season, right? So I go into the season, I go into January, I have no baseball. My friends, my brothers that were 30, 35 of us, immediately gone. I'm immediately busy. I have no free time on the weekends for it. I have no time to really go home because I'm doing both jobs here and there, also finishing master's my last semester. I have bills for the first time that I'm really like, hey, like my dad's like, hey, like, now you have a job. Now you got to start paying stuff, right? I'm trying to have a social life, right? And so then I get all this, and I'm like, okay, God, I understand. I get through the spring season, and I feel really good. and then the summer hits, and then it's the full-time job here. Now it's full-time because I wasn't full-time. Now it's full-time. And then when I found out that the Burlesons are going to new adventures, so we have new pastors, right? And I love the Barnes, but you also know, like I said, there's change, so you know there's going to be a different season, right? And then you sit there and, okay, now I'm getting comfortable, and then Heather, and then now I have a girlfriend, and so now that is another new season that I have to navigate because I've been singing for 2 years. I'm like, oh, it's not just my self-decision. It's somebody else I have to consider, right? And then we finally get into this rhythm, and then the school year starts, and then I'm going, oh my gosh, then the full-time job with this and T-Rock, as you know, like, there's just a lot, and I'm like so excited that we have so many people. And then my dad calls me like a month ago, like, hey, by the way, I'm getting a new job. I'm like, you mean the job that's been providing for our family for like 12 years and your business and all these things? I'm like, you have a job lined up? And he goes, nope. I'm sitting there, I'm like, cool. So it's really weird. So there's all these new seasons of new, right? And so I'm so glad God told me that. But this is where you're sitting there and you're going, well, Cody, that's really cool, but that sounds like a pretty cool story. Like, if you heard my story, that's really nothing. Like, the fact that you're talking about it, and I'm not sitting there for you to feel bad for me. I'm just trying to provide some perspective. But maybe you cannot relate to that story, and there is somebody in this room today who I had lunch with this person last week, and it's actually Connor in the front row. And I told him, like, hey, I need you to be here because I want to talk about your story a little bit. But I want to go full into details of his story, but there's this one quote that he said. I told him, sorry, I got to write this down, like, you're going to be my message next week, but I just want to talk about it. But he said this, and some of you are going to understand this from some not. He goes, Cody, I wasn't disciplined through sports and activities, but through trauma. And that's how his life is, and you know his story right there. You don't need to know all the smaller details of it, but you understand that he went through a life of trauma and not through sports and activities like I had the privilege of doing. And so I sit there and I'm having this conversation in Chick-fil-A. The conversation was probably supposed to be 30, 40 minutes. It turned into 2 hours. But I enjoyed every minute of it, Connor. But it was one of those things where I didn't realize what it is. And so anytime I hear those stories, I feel really bad. And he interrupted me and goes, Cody, don't feel bad for me that I went through it. Be grateful that I got through it. Don't be sad be grateful that I'm still here and that I got through that trauma, right? And so maybe you relate to that side of the story. But I want to tell you there, and you sit there and go, well, Cody, how does this relate to my life? Like, that's cool, but every time I talk about my story, everyone always says, well, go to the Bible. Go to those stories. It's going to teach you, right? But I want to explain something to you today. I want to let you know that, and this is going to be really weird, but stay with me. The Bible isn't about you. It's not. But it's to you. It is written to you, your family, your future. And it's about God's love for the world and his redemption through Jesus. So it's not about you, but since it's written to you, here's another truth. Because it's written to you, the Bible is meant to not just inform you, but to transform you. It is the textbook of life that, yeah, it has information in it and it has wisdom, absolutely. But it is not just to be like, oh, this is what you do, this is the boundary, this is the rule. It's not that. It's meant to transform your life. And because it's there to transform your life, and it may not be written, may not be about you, but it's written for you, you can relate to the people that are in the stories of the past. And you can put yourselves into the disciples because of that, and you can put yourselves in those. I want you to keep in mind of that when we look at this into Matthew 14. And so we're going to go through this whole chapter, but there's a reason. There's really like 3 stories kind of that are going on in this chapter. And I initially was only going to talk about the last part, and then I'm reading it, and then the first section and the second stories are providing extra context for what happens at the end, right? So we're going to talk about that so we're going to go to Matthew 14. Matthew 14 is amazing because in the first verse, it talks about King Herod, and it says, King Herod says, it's not on the screen, but I'm just going to explain this first part, and then there'll be some other verses that we'll read through. I promise we'll read through a bunch in a second. But in Matthew 14, in verse 1, it talks about King Herod he hears about Jesus and all that Jesus is doing, and he goes, it must be John the Baptist that is risen from the dead. Because basically he's saying, hey, there's no one else I've known that has the ability to do the things that hearing about Jesus doing, because I only knew about John the Baptist. But the reason why he says that is because he killed John the Baptist. Let me explain. At this time, John the Baptist is not only Jesus' cousin, but he's the forerunner. He's the person that is sent before Jesus, because people thought that John the Baptist was the Messiah. And John the Baptist clearly tells people, no, I'm not. There is someone coming that is greater than me. There's somebody here to save us all, who is the Messiah, right? But in that Jewish culture at the time, they view him as a prophet. So why I say that as a prophet is he's a religious leader. He is someone of importance. So King Herod doesn't want to kill him. He wants to kill him, but he can't kill him because he's afraid there's going to be a riot from the people. So the best thing he does is he imprisons him. So he puts him in jail. But the thing about that is, and this is where it gets interesting, because John the Baptist realizes the relationship with King Herod and his wife. I'm going to try to say her name right. Herodias, or Herodias, I believe that's Herodias. Thank you. Herodias is the former wife of King Herod's brother Philip. Synced in? Perfect. Okay, so his brother, right? Actually, in the Bible, it has a different name for her, and then her name had changed. Okay, so John the Baptist finds this out and says, and is vocally tells them like how this is not okay, right? Then we go on and later in the verse talks about that Herodias' daughter had pleased King Herod, and King Herod goes, hey, whatever your wish is my command. So he talks about this, and she goes, I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And immediately King Herod is like, I don't want to do that, but he made a commitment and a vow, so he did it. When John the Baptist's disciples had heard this, they went and took his body and buried it, okay? And then they go tell Jesus, and this is where we pick up. So now you have the context of it. Now let's go into Matthew 14, 13 through 14. As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was heading and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So Jesus just hears a great friend, a family member, somebody who also, which I didn't mention, had baptized him, had a massive role in his life, is now dead, has now passed. So that's why he says, I need to be alone. He wants to be alone, but he feels compassion for the people anyway because they hear where he is, right? And so then if we read later into it, if you read verses 15 through 21, this is where a lot of people don't know about this story. If you don't know the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, that's what the story is next. Jesus has just heard that John the Baptist, his cousin, his friend, beloved one, is now dead. And then he goes and he has all these crowds of people that just said that heals the sick, and over 5,000 people of men, it says in scriptures, 5,000 men and plus women and children, so there's definitely more than just 5,000, are at this point, and they go, and the disciples tell Jesus, send them home. They need to eat. They've been there all day, and Jesus goes, there's no need. And then the disciples go, well, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. But the scriptures say that he goes, give them to me, and it's amazing because when he reads the 5,000, it shows in scriptures that every last mouth was fed. And everyone was abundant. So they were full. They weren't sitting there like, oh, I just got one piece. It was an absolute miracle, right? But people don't talk about the context of it beforehand, right? And this is still the context of what our main passage is. So you sit there, and so when that happens and Jesus feeds, he goes, tells his disciples, and we pick it up actually in Matthew 14. I was just about to get ahead of myself. So this is where the reading comes in. Matthew 14, verses 22 through 33. So Jesus had just said this. He fed the 5,000. They also have 12 extra baskets of food, and Jesus has given it to them. And so we pick up at 22, and it says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. So he's basically saying, hey, disciples, y'all go do this. I'm going to tell everybody to go home. I'm going to make sure they're okay. Sending them home, right? After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Oh, excuse me, so sorry. So meanwhile, now the disciples on the boat, Jesus is away, right? And so they're sitting there in the verse 24. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, so right in the middle of the night, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Pause there. So Jesus has just gone from hearing a family member and a close friend is gone. Not there. In a brutal way, not like old age, brutally executed. Then Jesus is sitting there and goes, he needs sleep. He tries to get some rest. But then the crowd follows him because they hear about his healing powers. And then Jesus, instead of getting mad, getting upset, has compassion on them and heals them. and goes straight into teaching all day long. Then he performs another miracle of 5,000. And then we sit there, and the disciples are, think of basically like a hurricane almost, or like a massive like tsunami that is coming through in the sea. And then the disciples see literally Jesus walking on the water. And so then we pick up. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. So they have all this. They have just seen that Jesus has fed 5,000 people plus with 5 loaves and basically a foot long. That's how I had to like double check it. Like, they're like a foot long, right? 5 foot longs of just bread and 2 fish. And he feeds them. And the disciples are still sitting there and they have doubt. They've seen these miracles, and this isn't just one of the miracles that they've seen. They've seen miracles over and over and over again. And they had the opportunity, unlike we do, to actually see the miracles of Jesus with their eyes. They were able to hear the crowds. They were able to see it, and they still doubted. But if you notice, if we reread Matthew 14:31, it says, Jesus immediately, didn't hesitate, didn't there. Peter gets out of the boat, and he's walking on water too. And he goes, when he looks down, he realizes, holy cow, I'm walking on water, right? As anyone's reaction would be, right? And then he starts to sink, and immediately Jesus reached out and grabbed him. "You of so little faith," Jesus said, "why did you doubt me?" And the importance of this verse is to tell you is that if you've noticed, Jesus doesn't say you have no faith. He says little. And if we go a couple chapters later in Matthew 17, it says, in 17:20, it says, "I tell you the truth. If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it would move. Nothing would be impossible." And so, whether you're a Christian in the house tonight or you're checking out for the first time, we still welcome you, whether it is. But I want to explain to you, this is a verse that has kind of been thrown around, that is a pretty popular verse, mustard seed. But the reality of it is, have you ever seen the size of a mustard seed? I hadn't until today. Maybe you have, but I want to show you. There's a picture of it. That's what a mustard seed looks like. Jesus is telling you, I need this much. I'm not asking you to do this massive thing. I said, I need this much. That is all. I need just a little bit. And so when you go through life, you're going to experience doubt. You're going to be able to sit there and you're going to have seasons of your life where you're going to be going, God, I don't understand the season that I'm in. I don't understand why you have me going through this. I don't know why. There's no need. There's no purpose for this. Why? And God says, I just need your faith the size of a mustard seed. And so you're going to have those. But the crazy part about it is you have to understand that God's never going to leave you. He's not. He's never going to leave you. Because what the reality is God's going to meet you in the season that you're in. Whether you're in a really high of Jesus moments and you're really excited and you're on fire for Him and you're doing all these things, you're really excited and you're in your Word all the time and you're going to church and you're doing all these things, you're going to like passion events, you're doing all this stuff, He's going to meet you there. He's also going to meet you when you're not in your Word. When you're not in life groups. When you're not in all these events that are supposed to help you, not because we're just driving by attendance, but because it transforms your life, not just inform it. And so that is the point. So the challenge is understanding, is doing exactly what Peter did. Just get out of the boat. Get out of the boat of whatever season that you are in right now. Of sitting there going, I'm not good enough. The world's telling me I can't do it. That degree's too hard. I can't do this. I can't do that. My family, history. But Jesus said, just get out of the boat. Follow me. I need a mustard seed faith. That's all. And start saying yes to His plan for you. Start saying yes to that. And you're sitting there like, Cody, well, I don't know His plan for it. That's okay. Just get out of the boat. Get out of the boat of your own desires. And start walking towards Him. And some of you, the boat's going to be a little small, like maybe a pontoon boat's going to be like there. Some of you are going to be like a little bit bigger, and you're like, it's going to be really quiet, and you're going to have to really like, or maybe crawl up and get out of the boat. Some of you, it's going to be hard and easier, but get out of the boat because he has a journey for you. And what's crazy is when you can get out of the boat, the part of Connor's story is that this place right here helped transform his life. But it wasn't because he heard about T-Rock from our social media. It wasn't because it was on campus. It was his friends one of them sitting right next to him. It was a volunteer. And Leroy's not here. He's in Waco. He had graduated, but Leroy was also a massive part of that. And it was those people that keep inviting in over and over and over again that when Connor finally said yes, Allison, who's sitting right next to him, literally like verbally screamed, ran up to him and gave him a hug because Allison knew the importance of that. He saw Connor hurting. He saw his pain and was like, I just want to show you a different way. And I don't know if Allison was rude about it or not, maybe a little bit, I don't know. But definitely what she was is she was definitely persistent because she was so excited that he was there. He got baptized on this stage. His life has been forever transformed. He's the first generation Christian in his life and his family. And that's why I sat there and talked there 2 hours, because I didn't understand, I didn't realize the impact that this place had on him. And it's not just about T-Rock. It's not just about Timbridge. It's any place of this word that is given to us by God is not an instruction manual. It is there to transform your life. And if you study it and you go inside of it and you look at the scriptures and you truly understand, you're going to be like, I have a God that loves me. And I don't deserve it. And we don't. We don't deserve that kind of love. We are messed up, sinful people. There's people in this house tonight that you've probably gotten upset at me. I have failed you in some sort of capacity. There's people here that have failed you. But guess what? That's life. It's going to happen. I'm sorry. I can't, it's called sin. But Jesus has a way for us to at least transform our lives. And so when you go back to the mustard seed and you sit there and go, Cody, well, what does a life with God look like? And why does God use a mustard seed as an example for that? Well, because it starts off really small, but didn't he say you can move mountains, right? It's really small. But have you ever seen what that mustard seed turns into? It turns into that. It turns into that. You have a life that you have no idea what it is. You are all college students in here. Maybe not. Connor, you're not. Right? But even if you are even 40 or 50 years old in this room, God still has a purpose for you in his life. And he's saying, I need this much. I need this. And he's going to meet you in that season. But instead, sometimes we get stuck in a season where it's like, I can't see the end. I just don't see it. And God's saying, I just need this much. So if we can remember that, and in whatever season that we understand that God's going to be in a season of life, no matter where we are, he's going to meet us there. He's just going to meet you. And he's going to give you what you need in that season. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord,